These are fresh off the rapid prototyping machine. There'll be 20 of these which go up to make a lampshade. It's a big sphere. You can imagine that hanging from the ceiling or as a floor lamp. Now the flies would be attracted, they're naturally attracted to light. They would crawl through these small holes, but the holes are quite small on the inside. It would be very hard for the flies to get back out again, so they become trapped within the lampshade. There's a device at the bottom. As the flies die, they would fall down and go through the small hole at the bottom, and that would again lead into one of your fuel cells, like that. So what we're doing is utilising the natural attraction to the lamp to direct flies finally into the fuel cell to again generate power. It is a complicated issue, this one, how we describe them, because clearly they don't look like your stereotypical robots. That's something we're very conscious about. And why they exist is also something quite complicated. I mean, we quite honestly happened upon the project by Jimmy's visit to the Bristol Robotics Lab and the microbial fuel cell, which we had actually used before on a previous project. But we were thinking initially about ideas around autonomy and what the function of these robots might actually be. And coming from a design background, product design background, we're obviously quite interested and in tune with domestic products and the kind of technologies that we surround ourselves with in the home. And we thought about where we'd seen the Slugbot from Bristol, and this didn't seem to really gel with what we'd imagine people would want to coexist with. So initially we started thinking very much about that, what kind of things that we share our lives with, why we share our lives with them, what they give to us, whether it be for aesthetic reasons, status reasons, utilitarian reasons, and so on. And so that was really the starting point. That's one side of it. It's very much the product, the design side of it. But because they're microbial fuel cells, they're almost like animals in a way. They I would say devour, but they use meat or organic matter to generate the electricity to survive. They don't use power sockets. They don't use batteries. They don't need any human intervention apart from the initial putting into place, almost like Frankenstein. You can imagine pressing the button and this thing suddenly is living. So you've got the design side of it, and then you've got the living side of it. So this is where Julian Vincent came into it. We were working with and chatting a lot with Julian, who's been very inspirational, looking at the biomimetic side of it, looking at natural mechanisms of survival, both in the wild and in the domestic setting, how animals have evolved to exist in a certain environment, to use their specific skills and evolved tendencies to either attract prey or to defend themselves. A few people have asked us now, are these robots? Why are they robots? They're not robots. There's not really much agreement even in the field of robotics on what a robot actually is. It's very vague. So what we wanted to do was to take advantage of this vagueness and people's lack of ideas or definitions of what a robot is, and say, well, yes, they're robots, but if we're going to coexist with these things, then they have to live within human terms and conditions. One analogy I can give is the Labrador. All dogs have evolved from the wolf over a period of about 12,000 years, but modern domestic dogs have given up a lot of the natural sort of tendencies and behaviours of the wolf. They've not got fierce-looking eyes, they've not got big spiky ears, they don't bare their teeth anymore. They've become puppy-like. Like the Labrador is the perfect example of that. They look like a puppy throughout their whole life. They've got these doe-like eyes, they look at you with warmth and love, and we develop this relationship with them, and as a result they've cemented their place in the house. We coexist with them quite happily. This is an amazing survival technique. We wanted to take sort of that route almost, so that this is how the robots find their way into the house. As a result, they've taken on this sort of domestic, almost like wallpaper magazine-esque aesthetic. So we were looking at sort of modern furniture, the type of products that we surround ourselves with in our houses, looking at the role of those products. They're not always for function.
To make them more accessible, we've pitched them as these entertainment entities as much as anything, where you're watching these things attempting to survive through this relationship of animal and machine. So two separate kind of entities coming together in a kind of microcosm, similar to a vivarium, and we've also drawn parallels with artificial environments such as Big Brother, Wife Swap, and TV programs like that, because we thought, why not? Why should the TV be one of the sort of predominant entertainment systems in the house when there are things like vivariums, and we've got our robots which will have a function, but they could also be kind of entertaining in the spectacle of life and death. So as soon as you've got a fly coming to a predatorial robot, which happens to be a lamp, suddenly the relationship between these two objects are charged and, you know, possibly entertaining. All this kind of stuff happens anyway. People have fly paper in their houses, people have mouse traps in their houses, and it's not normally a problem, but there's a strange edgy intent with these robots in that they're feeding on them, so you're kind of complicit in their survival and that food chain. So that's another area. I mean, one of the things that we're particularly interested in is when you present an object or product and put it in a very normal situation like the home, people's behaviour changes, and that's obviously something that we're really interested in looking into. In some of the stories about robots, there's this kind of post-apocalyptic scenario where robots go along, and actually these robots would survive really nicely in that environment, lots of dead people around, lots of flies flourishing, and these robots really would power up quite nicely, but there'd be no one else to entertain. So what would their function be then?